This is the Ugly Duckling, the car that started the Marcos story. Back in 1959, racing driver Jem Marsh and aeronautical designer Frank Costin got together to produce this gull-wing coupe that swept all before it in club racing in those years, driven by people like Jackie Oliver and, believe it or not, Jackie Stewart. From this car, they moved on to the stunningly beautiful Adams-designed Marcos 1800. Came out at the 1961 Motor Show to almost universal press acclaim. And it's this car that set the pattern Marcos was to follow for the next 40 years. Those early Marcos designs, both the Racer and the 1800, were famous for their chassis. They were made of maroon ply, bonded into a monocoque. In fact, plywood was an excellent material, light, durable, rigid, and surprisingly good in a crash. It was time-consuming and labour-intensive to make, though, and in 1969 the company went over to a tubular space frame chassis with fiberglass body, a formula it's stuck to ever since. Marcos make all their own mouldings here in Weybridge, even down to the construction of a new buck to take the body moulds from. This is the definition of a hand-built car. Paul here still does hand layup of all the glass fibre components. It's a time-consuming and extremely labour-intensive process, but it results in very high-quality mouldings. With such a low production volume, each car is almost individually made for the customer. Now, from the very first cars, Marcoses have always had fixed seats and the pedals and steering column move. And that means Mary here can build different variations of thickness of cushion for the seats, depending on the build of the customer. Since the first days of Marcos, they've been closely associated with racing. And 40 years later, no exception. In 1998, they started the Dunlop Marcos Challenge, a one-make series with control engines for all the participants, the 4.6-litre V8 ensuring extremely exciting racing. There's currently almost 20 cars competing in the British series and a similar number competing in Holland. Final assembly lines hardly look like Dagenham, but then they only need to turn out a couple of cars a week. Marcos can't tell you how many cars they've built over the 40 years, but they think it must be close to the 1,000 mark, and many of them are still on the road as sought-after classics. So the model lineup from Marcos now consists of the Manta Ray, the Mantis with the 4.6-litre Ford quad cam, supercharged if you want, engine from the Mustang, and finally the LM500 race car. Like many small companies that have to survive the British economy, Marcos have had their ups and downs over the years, sometimes looking decidedly shaky, but Jem Marsh is a survivor, and today the company's in better shape than it's ever been, with production running at a steady 2 a week, the order book full, and between 3 and 6 months wait if you decide you want one of these cars. In many ways, the Marcos story is the epitome of the British motor industry. Seems the only thing we're any good at is building sports cars.